There comes a moment when heaven begins to rearrange the pieces of your life. When people you thought would stand beside you forever begin to drift away. You call, and they don't answer. You reach out, and they pull back, and your heart wonders, God, why? What did I do wrong? But hear me. Sometimes it's not rejection, it's redirection. Sometimes God removes them, not because they were bad, but because they were limited. They could not go where you are headed. They were part of your past, not your promise. You see, there are places in destiny where only obedience can travel. And when God decides to elevate you, He will separate you. He will cut away what can't survive in higher altitudes, because not everyone can breathe the air of purpose. So if doors have closed, if people have vanished, if the circle has grown smaller, don't despair. It's not a curse. It's a calling. You are being prepared for something greater, something sacred. And before God takes you there, He will make sure that only what belongs to your future remains. Because where you're headed, not everyone can follow. There are times in life when we feel the sting of separation, when people we trusted, loved, or depended on suddenly drift away. It's confusing, painful, and often feels unfair. We wonder if we've done something wrong, if we've failed in some way, or if we're being punished. But what if the truth is the opposite? What if that removal wasn't a punishment, but a divine act of protection? What if God removed them because they simply couldn't go where you're headed? You see, God sees what we cannot. He looks ahead into the seasons of our life, into the roads we haven't yet walked, and the mountains we haven't yet climbed. He knows the weight of the calling placed upon you. He knows the kind of strength, discipline, and purity of heart that will be required to carry it. And sometimes, the people who walked with you in one chapter cannot carry the same weight in the next. They were essential for your growth then, but they're not equipped for where you're going now. It's easy to cling to comfort. We hold on to people because they represent familiarity, security, and identity. Maybe they were with you when you struggled. Maybe they saw you when you had nothing. Maybe you shared dreams, plans, laughter, and tears. But there comes a time when God begins to stir the atmosphere around you, and you feel that subtle unease. Things that once flowed easily now feel strained. Conversations that once uplifted you now drain your spirit. The bond that once brought joy now carries heaviness. That's not coincidence, that's divine separation beginning its work. When God removes someone from your path, He's not asking for your understanding, He's asking for your trust. Because you can't see what He sees. You can't see the dangers hidden in your next season. You can't see the spiritual weight that some people simply aren't built to handle. God knows who will encourage your purpose and who will weaken your focus. He knows who will nurture your growth and who will pull you backward into the comfort of old habits. And so, out of mercy, not malice, He removes them. It's hard because we're human. We crave companionship. We build our lives around people. But the truth is, some people are only assigned to a season, not your lifetime. They were never meant to cross into your destiny. They were meant to prepare you for it. They might have taught you how to love, how to trust, how to fight, or even how to forgive. But once their purpose is complete, God will begin to distance them. And if we don't let go, we risk missing what He's trying to bring next. Think about the story of Abraham. When God called him to go to a new land, He told him to leave his family and his father's house. But Abraham took Lot with him anyway. And for a while, it seemed fine. They traveled together, prospered together, and everything looked right. But eventually, the land could not sustain them both. There was conflict, confusion, and division until Abraham finally released Lot. And only after Lot was gone did God speak again to Abraham and reveal the fullness of His promise. That's not coincidence. That's divine pattern. Sometimes, God's next word for your life won't come until certain people have left. The reason is simply destiny requires clarity. If the wrong people remain in your circle, their voices can drown out God's voice. Their opinions can dilute your obedience. Their presence can distract you from the path God is trying to set before you. It's not that they're evil, it's that they're not aligned with the mission ahead. They can't see the vision you see. They can't carry the fire you carry. And if they stay too long, the very thing that once felt like friendship can become a weight around your spirit. Sometimes God will remove people gently, a slow drifting apart, a quiet distance. Other times, it's sudden and painful betrayal, misunderstanding, or even rejection. And though it hurts deeply, you must remember God's hand is still in control. The same God who closed that door will open another. The same God who took them out of your path is preparing the right ones to walk with you into your future. But He can't bring the new if you're still holding on to the old. We often pray for elevation, for promotion, for purpose. But we forget that elevation requires separation. You can't climb higher while holding on to what's below. Some people are simply too heavy for the next level. They were meant to be part of your foundation, not your future. And when God sees that they no longer fit the blueprint He's building, He starts the process of removal, not to break you, but to free you. So when people leave, don't chase them. When doors close, don't bang on them. When relationships fade, don't beg for revival. Trust that God is doing what He's always done, orchestrating every detail for your good. Trust that the loss you feel today is making space for the promise He's preparing tomorrow. Because divine separation isn't about loneliness, it's about alignment. God is aligning you with purpose, with destiny, with people who will sharpen you and not drain you, who will speak life and not doubt. And maybe one day, you'll look back on those who left and finally understand. They couldn't go where you were headed. Not because they were unworthy, but because your call demanded something different. God had to protect your destiny by removing their presence. What felt like heartbreak was actually His hand. What felt like abandonment was actually advancement. And though you couldn't see it then, one day you'll thank Him for every closed door, every goodbye, every silence that felt unbearable, because it was in that silence that God was preparing your next chapter. Growth is never gentle. It's not smooth, it's not easy, and it's rarely comfortable. When God begins to grow you, He doesn't always do it by adding things. Often, He does it by taking things away. We think of growth as increase, as gaining more, but in God's design, growth often comes through pruning. Just like a gardener cuts away branches that no longer bear fruit, God begins to trim the parts of your life that no longer serve your purpose. It's not punishment, it's preparation. You're being shaped for something greater, and that shaping requires letting go. There comes a time when God looks at the soil of your life and sees that certain relationships, habits, or mindsets are draining more than they're producing. He sees that they've stopped feeding your spirit, and instead they're holding you back from bearing the kind of fruit He desires in you. So He takes out His shears, the divine pruning knife, and begins to cut. You might feel it in the form of loss, disappointment, rejection, or sudden change. It feels like everything is falling apart, but in reality it's falling into place. God is clearing the ground so that new growth can take root. We often pray, God, make me stronger. God, take me higher. God, enlarge my territory. But when He starts to prune, we resist. We cry out, God, why are you taking this away? Why are you allowing this pain? What we forget is that you cannot grow and stay the same. You can't carry old mindsets into new seasons. You can't hold on to dead branches and still expect to bear new fruit. Every act of divine pruning is an act of divine mercy. He removes what you think you need so He can give you what you truly need. Think of a vine. When a gardener prunes it, he doesn't do it out of anger. He does it because he knows that if he doesn't, the vine will grow wild, weak, and fruitless. He cuts not to destroy it, but to direct its energy toward what matters most. In the same way, God removes distractions, wrong connections, and even good things that are no longer aligned with your purpose. Because sometimes good can be the enemy of great. The things that once helped you can become the very things that hinder you if you hold on to them too long. There are seasons when God will strip you of the familiar, not because He's cruel, but because He's calling you to mature. He's not interested in your comfort. He's invested in your calling, and calling requires refinement. You can't step into your destiny with the same thinking that got you through survival. You can't build your future while clinging to your past. So God allows pressure, pain, and pruning to reshape you into the person who can handle what's coming next. When you start to grow spiritually, you'll notice that not everyone around you grows with you. Some people will resist your change because it threatens their comfort. They liked you better when you were smaller, more predictable, more dependent. But growth forces separation. When God begins to elevate you, those who are not growing with you will either adapt or drift away. That's not your failure. That's the natural process of spiritual evolution. You can't shrink yourself to fit into places God has already outgrown in you. Sometimes the pruning comes in the form of silence. You'll go through seasons where heaven feels quiet, where your prayers seem unanswered, and where nothing around you makes sense. Those are not wasted seasons. They're sacred. God is working underground, strengthening your roots, deepening your foundation. You might not see fruit right now, but something is happening beneath the surface. The pruning prepares you for the harvest, but you have to trust the process even when it hurts. Growth demands obedience. It requires faith to release what's comfortable in exchange for what's coming. You can't grow and control everything at the same time. God will often take away your safety nets, the things you used to rely on, so you can finally rely on Him. He'll remove the people who once validated you, so you learn that your worth doesn't depend on their approval. He'll close doors that once opened easily, so you learn that His timing is not yours. Every cut is calculated. Every removal is intentional. Every loss has a lesson hidden inside it. And even when it feels like everything is being stripped away, remember, trees don't die in winter, they rest. The pruning season isn't death, it's preparation for resurrection. You might not see the beauty of what God is doing now, but when the time comes, the same branches that were cut will burst forth with new life. The pain will make sense. The loss will bear fruit. The tears you cried in the cutting season will water the ground for your next harvest. So when you feel God cutting things away, when you lose people, opportunities, or versions of yourself that you thought you needed, don't fight the process. He knows exactly what He's doing. He's not trying to destroy you. He's trying to shape you into someone who can carry the weight of His blessing. You are not being punished. You are being prepared. Because growth isn't about what you gain, it's about what you're willing to let go of so that God can give you what's better. And sometimes that better can only come after the pruning. There are moments in life when something or someone suddenly leaves and you're left staring at the empty space they once filled. You replay memories, you question yourself, you wonder why it had to end the way it did. It feels like loss, sharp, heavy, and unfair. But what if what you're calling loss is actually God's protection in disguise? What if what you thought was being taken from you was actually being shielded from you? Sometimes, what feels like the worst thing that ever happened is the very thing that saved you from what you couldn't see coming. God has a way of hiding blessings inside of heartbreak. He has a way of turning the very things that confuse you into the things that protect you. You see, we only see in part a small fragment of the whole picture. But God sees the entire path, every step before you take it, every trap before you fall into it. And sometimes He will allow something to end, not because it was evil, but because it wasn't equipped to go with you. It wasn't meant to survive where He's taking you. So He steps in quietly sometimes painfully, and removes it before it can destroy what He's building in you. We cry when people walk away. We ache when opportunities close. But if we could see what God saw, we would thank Him for every closed door. Because sometimes that person who left wasn't meant to be your partner. They were sent only to teach you what love is not. That job you lost wasn't meant to be your future. It was meant to build your discipline. That friendship that fell apart wasn't betrayal. It was protection from spiritual stagnation. We see endings as rejection, but heaven sees them as redirection. God doesn't always protect you by adding something new. Sometimes He protects you by taking something away. There are people who smile with you, but cannot handle the weight of your destiny. There are places that seem harmless, but carry spiritual poison that would infect your growth. There are plans that look good on the surface, but would lead you off course if you followed them too long. And because God loves you too much to let you ruin your calling, He intervenes. It may come through disappointment. It may come through betrayal. It may come through silence. But underneath the pain, His hand is still there, guiding, covering, redirecting. It's not always easy to see divine protection in real time. In the moment, it just feels like chaos. You pray, and the answer doesn't come. You plan, and it falls apart. You trust someone, and they turn away, and your heart screams, "Why, God?" But what you don't realize is that while you're crying over what left, God is rejoicing over what didn't destroy you. You're grieving the removal, but He's celebrating your survival because He saw the hidden dangers behind that door. He heard the conversations you never did. He knew what would have broken your spirit if it had stayed. There are times when God will allow someone to exit your life because their presence would eventually block your promise. You might not understand it now, but you'll look back one day and realize that if they had stayed, you never would have grown. Sometimes the ones who hurt you the most are the ones God used the most, not to destroy you, but to strengthen you. That heartbreak built endurance. That rejection built resilience. That loneliness built intimacy with God. It didn't feel like protection, it felt like pain. But every tear watered something sacred inside of you. You must understand God's protection doesn't always look like walls. Sometimes it looks like wounds. Sometimes He'll let your heart break just enough to keep you from breaking completely later. He'll allow you to lose what you thought was essential so that you can discover what truly is. It's not easy to accept this when you're standing in the middle of the storm, but when the clouds clear, you'll see how every loss led you closer to purpose. Have you ever noticed how certain doors shut so firmly that no matter how much you knock, they won't open? That's not coincidence. That's divine mercy. God isn't ignoring your prayers. He's protecting your peace. If that door opened, you'd step into a season that wasn't meant for you. If that person stayed, you'd settle for less than what you were created for. Sometimes the no from God is the greatest yes for your destiny. It takes faith to believe that God's protection can come wrapped in pain. It takes maturity to say, God, I don't understand it, but I trust you anyway. When He removes something, He's never leaving you empty. He's making space for what's next. You can't receive new blessings with clenched fists. You have to release what's gone to make room for what's coming. The protection is in the pruning, and the pruning is in His plan. There's a hidden kindness in the way God removes what we refuse to release. If He didn't take certain things from you, you would have stayed where you were, stuck, small, and safe. But He loves you too much to let you settle. So He disturbs your comfort, interrupts your plans, and dismantles your expectations, all to protect the seed of purpose planted deep within you. Maybe one day, when you've healed, when you've grown, you'll look back and realize that every unanswered prayer was protection. Every goodbye was grace. Every ending was an invisible shield that kept you aligned with your calling. You'll see that God didn't forget you. he was saving you. Because sometimes the greatest evidence of his love is not in what he gives, but in what he takes away. There is a rhythm to everything God does. A divine timing that governs every moment, every encounter, every rise and every fall. Nothing in your life is random. Not the people who enter, not the ones who leave, not the seasons that change around you. God moves according to purpose, and his purpose moves according to time. You might want something right now, but God might be saying, not yet. You might be praying for something to end, but God might be saying, wait, because in his kingdom, timing is as important as the promise itself. Some people are not meant to walk into the next chapter with you, not because they are bad, but because their season in your story has already served its purpose. It's hard to accept this when you're in the middle of waiting or losing. We want to rush everything. We want every prayer answered instantly, every dream realized quickly, every plan fulfilled immediately. But God doesn't rush destiny. He doesn't move according to your clock. He moves according to eternity. His timing protects you from premature blessings that you're not ready to carry. Because what comes too early can destroy you, and what comes too late can discourage you. But what comes in God's time will sustain you. There are moments when you'll look around and wonder why things are shifting, why people you thought were permanent are suddenly fading, why doors that once opened easily are now locked. But what you're witnessing isn't chaos, it's alignment. God is rearranging your life to fit his divine schedule. He's removing what's expired to make room for what's eternal. Some people are tied to your past, not your promise, and God loves you too much to let old connections hold back new seasons. Imagine if every person who ever entered your life stayed. It would be chaos. You'd be crowded by voices that no longer speak your language, surrounded by energies that no longer match your purpose. You'd be weighed down by people who were only meant to walk with you for a mile, not the whole journey. So God, in his wisdom, allows endings to happen, not because he's cruel, but because he knows that timing matters. There are certain doors that only open when specific people have exited. There are divine appointments that can't begin until old assignments are complete. We see time as something linear, a straight line from beginning to end. But God sees time as seasons, cycles, layers that overlap and evolve. Just like nature has its appointed times, seed time, harvest, summer, winter, your life also has its seasons. There's a time to plant, a time to grow, a time to prune, and yes, a time to let go. When a season ends, holding on to it doesn't keep it alive, it only delays your next beginning. Some of the pain you feel is not from loss, it's from resistance. You're holding on to people and places God has already moved you from, trying to live in a chapter that's already closed. God's timing is never random, it's precise. He knows exactly when to bring people into your life and when to take them out. He knows when your heart is ready, when your faith is strong enough, and when your foundation can handle what he's about to give you. Sometimes he'll withhold a blessing until you're mature enough to manage it. Other times, he'll delay an answer until your character can carry the weight of the promise. Because destiny without discipline becomes destruction. And God cares more about your preparation than your presentation. It can be frustrating when you feel like you're ready, but nothing is moving. You see others advancing, doors opening for them, opportunities unfolding, and you wonder why you're still waiting. But you don't know what God is protecting you from. Maybe he's still working on something behind the scenes. Maybe the person or opportunity you're meant to meet isn't ready yet. Maybe he's still building the ground you'll stand on so that when he finally places you there, you won't fall. Timing isn't a delay, it's a design. There are also times when God will speed things up. When suddenly, after a long season of silence, everything begins to happen at once. People call it breakthrough, but in truth, it's simply the moment when obedience finally meets timing. All those years of patience, prayer, and pruning converge into one divine season where everything makes sense. But you can't experience that if you give up during the waiting. You have to trust that God knows when the right time is, even when you don't. And when it comes to people, divine timing is equally crucial. Some people enter your life to help you grow, others enter to test your growth. Some come to teach, others to challenge, and some to bless. But none of them are meant to stay forever. God appoints people for particular seasons. Their entrance and exit are both orchestrated. When their role in your story is complete, He will remove them so you can continue moving toward your destiny. You can't drag people into places where they don't belong, no matter how much you love them. Their time in your life was sacred, but it was never meant to be eternal. The beauty of divine timing is that it redeems everything. Nothing is wasted, not the waiting, not the loss, not the confusion. Every delay serves a purpose. Every detour carries a lesson. Every ending marks the beginning of something new. It may not feel fair now, but one day you'll understand why certain things didn't happen when you wanted them to. You'll realize that God's "not yet" was actually His "I'm protecting you." That His silence was Him aligning everything perfectly. You might not know it now, but the timing of every removal and every arrival in your life is sacred. People come when they are meant to teach you something. They leave when their purpose in your story has been fulfilled. And though it hurts, it's holy. Because if everyone stayed forever, you'd never move forward. The right people will come when you're ready for them, and the wrong ones will leave when you no longer need them. That is how God works. Not through randomness, but through rhythm. A divine rhythm that moves with purpose, not haste, and leads you exactly where you're meant to be, exactly when you're meant to be there. Faith is easy to speak of when life feels steady, when prayers are answered, doors are opening, and everything seems to flow smoothly. But true faith is proven in the moments when you can't make sense of what God is doing. It's in the silence after the storm, when what you trusted suddenly changes, when people leave, when plans fall apart, and when you're left standing in the middle of uncertainty wondering, why would God let this happen? That's where faith becomes real. Not when you understand everything, but when you trust even though you don't. There are seasons when God removes people, shuts doors, and shifts circumstances, and you're left feeling like the ground beneath you has disappeared. You pray for clarity, but heaven stays quiet. You search for meaning, but nothing makes sense. Those are the moments when God isn't asking you to understand, He's asking you to believe. Faith isn't built in comfort. It's forged in confusion. It's in those seasons of divine disconnection that you learn how to walk by faith and not by sight. When God takes someone out of your life, your natural instinct is to reach for them. You want to fix it, explain it, bring them back. But faith says, if God removed them, I will not chase what He has released. That's not arrogance, that's trust. Trust that His hand is still guiding you even when His plan feels painful. Trust that the God who led you into this season knows exactly how to lead you out. Because if faith only works when everything makes sense, it isn't faith, it's comfort disguised as belief. Faith is what keeps you steady when logic screams that it's over. It's what tells you to keep walking even though the path disappeared. It whispers, keep trusting, keep moving, keep believing. Because even though you can't see it, God is still working. He's arranging what you can't perceive, preparing what you can't imagine, and building what you can't yet hold. And if you give up too soon, you'll miss the beauty of what He's creating behind the scenes. Sometimes faith looks like silence, choosing not to argue with what's leaving. Sometimes it looks like stillness, choosing not to chase every answer. And sometimes it looks like surrender, saying, God, I don't understand this, but I'll still praise You. That's when faith becomes alive, when it becomes more than words, when it becomes the very oxygen of your soul. Because faith doesn't always roar. Sometimes it simply whispers through your tears, "I still believe." When God removes someone from your life, it's rarely because of rejection. It's because of redirection. But to see it that way, you have to trust Him beyond your emotions. Faith doesn't mean you don't feel pain. It means you trust God's plan through it. You can cry, you can grieve, you can question, but beneath it all, your heart must stay anchored in trust. Because if you only worship Him in understanding, you'll abandon Him in confusion. Faith grows strongest when you worship Him anyway. There are moments when faith feels like walking blindfolded through darkness. You take a step, not because you see the way forward, but because you know who walks beside you. You stop relying on explanations and start relying on His presence. You stop demanding answers and start finding peace in knowing that He doesn't make mistakes. The same God who led you into this season knows exactly how to carry you through it. The same hand that closed the door knows when to open another. Faith in transition is one of the hardest things to maintain. Because when everything familiar is shifting, your mind screams for stability. But faith teaches you that stability doesn't come from circumstances, it comes from trust. You might lose people, positions, or plans, but if you still have your faith, you haven't lost your foundation. That's why the enemy attacks your faith first. Because if he can shake your trust in God, he can control how you see the storm. But if you hold on to faith, you can walk through fire and not burn, through waters and not drown, because faith keeps you anchored to God's purpose, even when everything else feels unstable. Sometimes faith feels like standing in front of a closed door and thanking God anyway. It's saying, I don't know what's next, but I know who holds it. It's refusing to let disappointment turn into disbelief, because faith doesn't deny reality, it redefines it. It doesn't pretend that pain doesn't exist. It just believes that pain has a purpose. Even when God is silent, faith says, He's still speaking. Even when you can't see His hand, faith says, He's still working. When God calls you higher, He won't always give you the map. He'll give you a promise and ask you to walk. Every step forward requires faith, because you can't see the full picture. You only see the next step. And when you lose people along the way, when your circle grows smaller, when the path narrows and gets lonelier, that's when faith becomes your closest companion. Faith says, if they left, they were never meant to stay. If it ended, it was never meant to last. If it fell apart, God is about to rebuild it better. A faith is the bridge between what you can't understand and what God is doing behind the scenes. It holds you steady when emotions fluctuate, when questions remain unanswered, when the night feels long. It's what reminds you that even in loss, you're not abandoned. Even in confusion, you're not forgotten. And even in silence, you're not alone. When you learn to trust God's hand, even when you can't trace it, you step into a deeper level of faith, a faith that doesn't depend on comfort, clarity, or control. It's the kind of faith that says, even if I don't understand why this happened, I trust that you're leading me somewhere better. Because real faith isn't proven in what you gain. It's proven in what you're willing to let go of and still believe that God is good.